Hi, this is Chris Young. Welcome to episode 62, a very special episode of Contemplating Life. I'm going to depart briefly from my regularly scheduled episodes for a political rant and a confession. The title of this episode is, I'm a Coward. This is an open letter to the judicial system of the United States of America at all levels, federal through local. I was raised to appreciate our government deeply, and I am proud of our justice system in this country, especially the right to a trial by jury. I've always considered it an honor, a privilege, and a part of our sacred civic duty to serve on a jury. Unfortunately, the severity of my disability decreases my stamina to the extent that whenever I've been called for jury duty, I've had to decline to accept that honor. It's been a great disappointment to not have been able to participate in our government in such a capacity. I'm writing the script on Monday, April 15th, 2024, the day when jury selection began in a criminal trial of our former president. While I don't live in that jurisdiction, I wonder what my response would be should I ever be called to serve as a juror in a case or any other civil or criminal cases, or as a potential grand jury member in a case involving that particular defendant. As I fantasized about what would happen if I were in voir dire in such a case, I discovered something quite disturbing about myself. I would have to address the court in a statement somewhat similar to this. Your Honor, I'm sorry to report that I cannot be an impartial juror in this case or any other case involving this defendant. I love my country. I'm a patriot. I consider it a solemn civic duty, as well as an honor and a privilege to be a member of any jury. I've always believed I could be impartial in any conceivable case, despite any possible bias I might have. I see myself as a logical, critical thinker who can separate emotions and biases from decision-making. I'm staunchly opposed to the political policies of the defendant, yet I'm confident I could put those feelings aside and render an impartial verdict. I abhor the public conduct of the defendant, including but not limited to his disrespect for the military and the brave veterans who serve in it, as well as their families, his disrespect for disabled people, his disrespect for women, and his disrespect for immigrants or potential immigrants. Yet I'm confident I could put those feelings aside and render an impartial verdict. I abhorred the defendant's blatant disrespect for our public institutions, including but not limited to his disrespect for the FBI, our intelligence services, our free press, and his disrespectful abuse of Christian theology. Yet I'm confident I could still put all of those feelings aside and render an impartial verdict. Given all of those biases against the defendant, if the prosecution fails to make its case against him, I would sadly have to render an acquittal, no matter how personally disappointing I might find it. The problem comes if the prosecution makes its case, and I would have to give a guilty verdict. With all due respect to the court, I do not trust that my identity would remain anonymous should I serve on this jury. I believe that inevitably, somehow, my identity would become public knowledge. I have credible fear that the defendant himself would attack me on social media. This would bring about more attacks from his supporters, including other politicians, lawyers, and his cult of personality followers. The defendant has shown repeatedly that he will show no restraint whatsoever in ruining the lives of people who stand in the way of his quest to lead this country into fascism with him as its supreme leader for life. It is a matter of public record that many people, including those who had former political ties to him and who had been in the past his supporters, as well as ordinary innocent citizens simply serving their country dutifully as election workers and other government activities, these people have all fallen victim to the defendant's attacks and attacks from his supporters. Should I serve on this jury and render a guilty verdict, I would be risking my life and my way of life, as well as putting at risk my friends and my family. I've never been eligible for military service because of my disability, and while I abhor war, I would like to think that were I able, I could sacrifice my life for my country. But apparently that belief in myself is ill-founded. I'm not willing to risk my life to bring to justice this despicable human being who represents an existential threat to our democracy, as serious or more serious than any foreign enemy we have ever faced. I would more likely testify against a mafia boss than I would cross this dangerous defendant and become his target. Should the prosecution make its case, I would feel undue pressure to vote for acquittal to protect my life and livelihood from the onslaught of attacks I would receive should I be complicit in his conviction. Therefore, I am incapable of being an impartial juror in this case or any other case involving this defendant. I am deeply ashamed, but I am a coward. And I realize that in admitting that, and knowing that there are probably other people who feel exactly the way I do, that the defendant has already done significant harm to the country I love. May God help us all. So that's it. That's what I would say if I were sitting in a New York courtroom today under voir dire to serve on a jury in the case titled The People of the State of New York versus Donald J. Trump, submitted March 30, 2023, charge first-degree falsifying business records, 34 counts, citation IND-71543-23. A brief update. Although I wrote this script on Monday the 15th, the day that jury selection began, I'm recording it on Thursday the 18th. And initially, on Tuesday, they had selected 7 jurors. But one of those selected jurors has already backed out, and another one is likely to. Even the people who initially said that they could be impartial in this case are having second thoughts about whether or not they want to be involved at all. The personal cost to them may be too much, just like it would be to me. If you find this podcast educational, entertaining, enlightening, or even inspiring, consider sponsoring me on Patreon for just $5 a month. You get early access to the podcast and other exclusive content. I'm not really in this for the money, but every little bit helps, and my finances are a mess right now. As always, my deepest thanks to my financial supporters. That means more to me than I could ever express. Even if you can't provide financial support, post links. I just want more people to hear my stories. All my back episodes are available, so check those out. And if you have any comments, questions, or other feedback, please feel free to comment on any of the platforms where you found this podcast. I'll see you next week as we continue contemplating life. Until then, fly safe, everyone.